My name is Clara Whitmore. I am 41 years old and a lecturer in business administration at a mid-sized university in Denver. For nearly 2 decades, I lived what many would consider a blessed life, a solid marriage, a warm home tucked into a quiet suburb, and a career I had steadily built through persistence, sleepless nights, and a genuine love for teaching. My husband, Lucas, and I had been together for 17 years, years woven together by tradition, mutual goals, and the quiet routines of partnership. To the world, we were a perfect couple. Our smiles at faculty dinners were practiced, familiar. Our hands often found each other's in public, not out of passion, but habit. We hosted New Year's gatherings with coordinated menus. We booked vacations with military precision, Cancun, Tuscany, British Columbia, each with photo albums to match. The image was flawless. But the truth? The truth was quieter, grayer, harder to define. Like water eroding stone, something had been dissolving inside our marriage for years. I noticed the erosion in the silence between us over dinner, in how often he turned away from me in bed, in the light that had long since faded from his eyes when he looked at me. Still, I had refused to believe that the foundation could crumble completely. Until that Tuesday evening. Lucas was in the shower, the sound of water echoing from the bathroom with the rhythmic comfort of routine. I sat at the edge of the bed with a book in hand, not reading. The steam crept beneath the door. His phone, left carelessly on the nightstand, pinged once, soft, subtle. That familiar sound had become so normal I barely noticed it. But something, some invisible force, drew my eyes toward it. I have never been the type to spy or snoop. I believed trust was sacred, a cornerstone not to be tampered with. But that night, something ancient in me stirred, a knowing, wordless and deep. My fingers reached before I could tell them not to. The screen was lit. One message. One line. Table for 2 confirmed at Lumiere. Friday, 7:30 p.m. window seat as requested. She'll love it. Lumiere. The most elegant, exclusive restaurant in Denver. We had once talked about going there for our 10th anniversary, dreamed about it during a snowy night while eating Chinese takeout in our living room. But we cancelled that year. Lucas had a work trip, or so he said. I stared at the message as though it were a bomb. A quiet, digital detonation. My chest felt hollow. My heart, no, my whole being, tightened with a clarity I had never felt before. I didn't plan to unlock the phone. But I did. The passcode was still our wedding date. 4 digits. A silent irony. What I found was a universe I had never known existed. Messages, photos, jokes, notes. Conversations with a woman named Sophie. They had been writing to each other daily, hourly, it seemed. There were references to meetings, lunches, late-night thoughts. Jokes that no one else would understand. Photographs from a business trip to Santa Fe. A picture of her leaning against his shoulder. One of them sipping wine. Lucas smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. My breathing faltered. I remembered the recession in 2008, the way we clung to each other when we thought we might lose the house. He had been my rock. And now? Have you seen my blue tie? His voice came casually from the bathroom, muffled by steam and walls, as if the world hadn't just collapsed. I swallowed everything I felt and answered flatly, a second drawer. That night I lay beside him in bed, back turned, silent. His breathing was steady. Mine was shallow. How many times had I convinced myself that his distance was due to work pressure? How many excuses had I made for the late nights, the crisp new shirts, the occasional unfamiliar scent clinging to him like a whisper? I wasn't blind anymore. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye. Just like always. Good luck with the Japanese clients, I said, my voice smooth, composed. He nodded, unsuspecting, and walked out the door. I waited 5 minutes, then picked up my phone and called HR. I'd like to take a 3-day leave, I said. Not to cry. I had no interest in tears. I needed time to think. That morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the walls of my home seeming too quiet. A familiar cup of coffee had turned cold in my hands. But beneath the hollow sadness, something else stirred. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Sharp, focused. A kind of quiet determination I hadn't known I possessed. I didn't want an emotional outburst. I didn't want to throw plates or demand apologies. I knew what that path looked like, and it often ended with pity and vague remorse. I wanted something else. I wanted truth. Lucas had marked everything neatly in his digital calendar. There it was, Friday, 7:30 p.m., Lumiere. Notes about wine selection, special seating, even the name of the sommelier. So precise. So confident. So very predictable. I searched for Sophie through his firm's staff directory. Her full name, Sophie Walker. She worked in internal communications. Blonde, young, polished. From there, it took only a few clicks to find her social media, and then her husband's. Ethan Walker. Architect. Kind eyes. A gentle smile. A man who looked like he cherished family breakfasts and Sunday morning hikes. I didn't know Ethan, but I knew him. I knew what it felt like to be lied to in plain sight. I didn't want to humiliate him. I wanted him to know. Just as I had come to know. But not through accusation. Through revelation. As a lecturer, I often invited guest speakers. It wasn't unusual. It was even encouraged. So I crafted the most professional, polite email I had ever written. Guest Speaker Invitation, Sustainable Urban Design Series. Dear Mr. Walker, my name is Clara Whitmore, and I currently teach project management at Metro Denver University. We are hosting a speaker series on sustainable urban design, and your recent contributions to the Rivergate Business District caught our attention. If you are available, I would love to meet with you over dinner to discuss the details. I've made a reservation for this Friday at Lumiere, 7:30 p.m. Looking forward to connecting. Warm regards. Clara Whitmore. 2 hours later, his reply arrived. Thank you, Miss Whitmore. I'd be honored to attend. Friday at 7:30 p.m. works perfectly. The air left my lungs. This was real. And so was the sorrow that rose up behind my eyes. Next came the table reservation. I called Lumiere myself. Near the window, please, I said calmly. If possible, would like a table close to a party under the name Hamilton or Rothman. We're working on a potential design partnership with them. A harmless lie. It worked. We'll seat you close, the hostess said cheerfully. And just like that, it was arranged. That Friday, I stood in front of my mirror in a teal silk dress. The same one Lucas once called a bit too loud for formal dinners. My hair was in a bun, my heels champagne gold. I didn't wear them to impress. I wore them as armor. The battlefield? A 5-star restaurant with candlelight and soft violin strings. I arrived early. The table gave me a clear view of the one Lucas had reserved. I ordered a martini. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but anticipation. Clara Whitmore? I turned. Ethan. He looked exactly as I had expected, perhaps a little more tired, a little more guarded. He was polite, warm. We spoke of urban planning and architecture, exchanging small talk over fresh bread and still water. But I kept my eyes on the door. Then they arrived. Lucas wore the grey blazer I gave him for his birthday. Sophie was radiant, laughing, bright. I watched him pull out her chair, lean in with the ease of someone who believed he was safe. I kept my voice steady as I continued speaking with Ethan, who was too kind to see that I was unraveling inside. Lucas poured wine. Their hands brushed. Then, our eyes met. He froze. Sophie followed his gaze and turned pale. I turned back to Ethan, steadying my voice. "Excuse me," I said. "I need a moment." I walked to the restroom, each step deliberate. And there she was, Sophie. Alone. She stopped in her tracks when she saw me. "You're Clara," as she whispered. I nodded. "And you're the one who smiles at my husband like he's yours." Her lips quivered. "Please, or not here." "Why not?" I asked. "It's beautiful, isn't it? Candlelight. Music. Perfect for moments of truth." She turned, but Lucas was already there. "Clara, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low, tense. I didn't answer him. I turned and called out gently, "Ethan, could you come here for a second?" He rose and walked over, confused. "Ethan," I said, turning to face him fully, "this is my husband, Lucas. And I believe you recognize Sophie, or your wife." The entire restaurant seemed to freeze in that breathless moment. Time paused. Forks hung mid-air. Glasses trembled slightly against their stems. Sophie lifted her hand to her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief, tears brimming. Lucas stepped back, his face stripped of all color. Ethan turned slowly toward his wife, devastation spreading across his features like a slow sunrise, except this one only brought darkness. I turned, heels clicking against the polished floor, and walked away from the wreckage. Just before the door, I paused, looked back at them, two people caught in the collapse of their own secret world, and said calmly, "E.O., and don't worry. Dinner's still on." Lucas's company card seems quite familiar to her. And with that, I left. Head held high, shoulders steady. Behind me, there were full glasses, half-finished words, and the unmistakable silence of betrayal unveiled. When I returned to my table after the storm, Ethan remained standing, rooted to the ground like a man hit by lightning. His eyes hadn't left Sophie, who now trembled quietly in Lucas's arms. They looked like people yanked out of a dream and shoved face first into reality. I raised a hand and motioned for the waiter. "Please," I said gently but firmly, "I need a private room. And if possible, merge our table with Mr. Lucas Hamilton's. It seems we have a few things to clarify. The waiter hesitated for only a heartbeat, then nodded. Of course, Within minutes, we were ushered into a private room tucked away from the main dining area. Soft lighting pooled on the white linen tablecloth. The table was now set for 4. I sat first. Ethan quietly took the seat beside me. Lucas and Sophie sat across, their posture tense, like school children caught cheating on their final exam. No one spoke. No chairs scraped. No silver clinked. Just the faint murmur of distant music and the heavy breath of for lives unraveling. Lucas finally broke the silence. Clara. I don't even know where to start. Start 3 days ago, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. When you received the reservation confirmation, and I happened to see it on your screen. He froze. So did Sophie. She looked down. Lucas opened his mouth again, but I raised a hand. No need for a speech. I read everything. Every message. Every picture. Every carefully planned lie. Every secret weekend to Santa Fe. Don't try to imagine how it felt to read it. You can't. Sophie whispered, I'm sorry. I turned to Ethan. He's my husband. She's your wife. The least we both deserve is honesty, said to our faces. Ethan said nothing. His eyes stayed on Sophie, hollow and wounded. What are you going to tell me? He asked. That it was a mistake? That you were finding yourself? His voice cracked. Because clearly, you found something in the arms of someone else's spouse. Sophie broke into quiet sobs. It started as a joke. I didn't mean for it to become this. I felt invisible. Lucas listened. I listened, Ethan said, voice shaking. I redesigned your entire office because you said it didn't inspire you anymore. I spent entire weekends trying to help you feel seen. Lucas turned to me then, his voice quivering. Clara, I know I broke everything. But please don't let this be the end. I smiled. Not kindly. It was the smile of someone who had walked through a fire and realized she no longer feared the heat. This didn't end tonight, I said. It ended the moment you looked at her the way you used to look at me. That's when you decided our vows were suggestions, not promises. He lowered his head. Sophie turned away, tears streaming. I pulled a hotel key from my purse and placed it on the table. I'll be staying at the Celeste Hotel across the street. Room 1203. I already booked it. Lucas, you're welcome to return home, if you still have the nerve. I'll come back Monday. It would be best if you weren't there by then. Lucas's eyes widened. Clara, please. Don't do this. I'll do anything. We can fix this. You can't fix a house with a rotten foundation, I said. I used to be someone who forgave easily. But I've learned that sometimes forgiveness is just betrayal turned inward. I stood, adjusted my dress, looked at Ethan. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. He nodded. Thank you for showing me the truth. It hurts, but I needed it. I gave one final glance at Lucas and Sophie. I wish you both luck. Not because I forgive you, but because every choice has a cost. And eventually, the bill comes due. I walked out of Lumiere without looking back. The sound of my heels echoed in the upscale district, sharp and sure, cutting clean through the night. In my clutch was a single key, the one to my own clarity. At the hotel, the concierge greeted me with professional kindness. I took the key code silently. Inside the suite, I kicked off my heels and walked to the large window overlooking the glowing city. The lights shimmered against the glass, casting my reflection into the room. For the first time in years, I saw myself without Lucas beside me. Just me. Not someone's wife, not someone's second choice, not someone living in the shadow of someone else's attention. Just me. I sat at the edge of the bed and cried, not the graceful, cinematic kind. Not the quiet, dignified type either. It was raw, heaving, from the depths kind of grief. 17 years of shared history, of dinners kept warm, of lies disguised as compliments, of feeling invisible while someone else lit up under the gaze that used to be mine. I don't know how long I sat there. But eventually, a knock pulled me back. I walked to the door, peered through the peephole. Ethan. When I opened it slightly, he stood there in a coat, his hair tousled, face worn. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said softly. I didn't know where else to go. I opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat in 2 armchairs by the window. Outside, cars passed by as if the world hadn't cracked wide open hours ago. After a long pause, he said, "I still don't understand how you managed to sit through dinner like that." I gave a faint laugh. I didn't sit still. I waited. Some truths, if you let someone else say them, they lose their weight. He nodded. "Thank you for not letting me keep living in a lie." We talked like strangers who had accidentally found the same scar. He told me Sophie had believed in his wildest designs, that she understood a part of him he thought no one else did. I told him Lucas had placed a ring on my finger in the rain, promising to never lose his way. We were both wrong. "I think I'm going to file for divorce," I said. My voice was almost a whisper. Ethan looked at me, unsurprised. I don't think I can live with someone who can pretend that well either. I met his eyes. I'm not angry anymore. Not like I was. Anger fades. But I've learned one thing. I'll never stay in a relationship that chips away at my dignity piece by piece. "You're stronger than I thought," he said. "No," I said. Just the last one willing to look truth in the eye. That night, Ethan stayed in a separate room in the same hotel. Before he left, he said, "If you need a friend, I'm here." "Thank you," I said. "Tonight, you understood me better than my husband did in 17 years." I watched him walk down the hallway and disappear into the quiet. In that moment, I didn't feel strong. But I felt lighter. As if I had finally put down a suitcase filled with stones I never realized I was carrying. Lucas could beg. Could send flowers. Could write novels of apology. But the moment I saw how he looked at Sophie, that same light he once saved only for me, I knew. I didn't need permission to move on. I'd walk forward. Not because I wasn't broken, but because I still could. The next morning, I left the Celeste Hotel before the sun had fully risen. Fog hugged the city like a secret. I returned to the house where I had lived for almost 2 decades, not to stay, but to gather what was left of a life I no longer belonged to. Lucas was already there, waiting. He looked nothing like the man who used to light up boardrooms. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes red, hands shaking. "We need to talk," he said as I walked in. "Then talk. I know I betrayed you. I know there's no excuse. But we can still fix this. I've ended everything with Sophie. She left the city." "I know," I said. "Her coworker told me she resigned and moved back to Santa Barbara this morning." Lucas paled. "You told people?" "Not for revenge," I said. "But because I refuse to live in shadows anymore. I told your family, your colleagues, the truth. The whole truth. That you had an affair for almost a year. That while I was cooking dinner, you were sending someone else love notes from hotel rooms." He crumbled into the couch, burying his head in his hands. "You've ruined me," he whispered. "What will people think?" I laughed, cold and hollow. "That's what concerns you? Your image? You destroyed your life. I just stopped shielding it." He stood, stepped forward, tried to take my hand. "Clara, I love you." I stepped back. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have held me at night while giving your heart to someone else during the day." He fell to the floor. It meant nothing. It was just a mistake. No, Lucas. It was 100 deliberate choices. And now, I'm making mine. His voice cracked again. "If you leave, you'll ruin my life." "No," I said. "I'll save mine." The restaurant fell into a heavy, breathless silence as if the walls themselves had recoiled from the weight of truth. Sophie covered her mouth, her eyes widening in disbelief, while Lucas instinctively took a step back. Ethan turned to his wife, pain written across his face in deep, raw lines. I stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of the silence pressing against my chest. Then I spoke, voice calm but resolute. "Oh, and don't worry, dinner's still on." Lucas's company card seems familiar to her. Without another word, I walked away. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing with each step, marking the rhythm of my departure. I left behind half-finished glasses, untouched dessert, and a truth that could no longer be avoided. The table we had once shared was now a graveyard of unsaid apologies and broken promises. When I returned to my seat after the confrontation, Ethan was still standing, frozen, his gaze fixed on Sophie. She stood trembling in Lucas's arms. They both looked pale, like two people who had just awakened from a dream and been thrust into the harsh light of reality. I motioned for the waiter. "Please," I said gently but firmly. "I'd like a private room. And if possible, merge our table with that of Mr. Lucas Hamilton. We have some things to discuss." The waiter hesitated for only a second, then nodded. "I'll take care of it immediately, Within minutes, we were escorted to a discreet private room. The lighting was soft, almost too gentle for the gravity of the moment. The table was set for 4. I sat first. Ethan slid into the seat beside me. Lucas and Sophie sat across from us, eyes low, posture stiff, like students caught cheating on the final exam of their lives. No one spoke. There was no clinking of silverware, no shifting of plates, just the sound of distant music and the sharp, uneven rhythm of 4 people breathing in a room filled with shattered trust. Lucas broke the silence. Clara, I don't even know where to begin. I poured myself a glass of water. Start 3 days ago, I said simply. When you got the reservation confirmation. I saw it on your screen. That's when I knew. They both froze. Sophie looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Lucas opened his mouth to speak again, but I raised my hand. No monologues. I read everything, every message, every photo, every secret trip. Don't try to explain away something that took effort to hide. I remember exactly how it felt to read through all of it. Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. I turned to Ethan. He's my husband. She's your wife. The least we deserve now is the truth, spoken directly to our faces. Ethan's voice trembled. What are you going to tell me? That it was just a mistake? That you were trying to find yourself? Because it seems like you found a lot in the arms of someone else's partner. Sophie wept quietly. I never meant for it to go this far. I felt lost. Unappreciated. Lucas, he listened to me. I listened too, Ethan said, barely above a whisper. I spent weekends redesigning your office because you said you needed inspiration. I believed you. Lucas turned to me, his voice uneven. Clara, I destroyed the most valuable thing in my life. But please, don't let this be the end. I smiled, not kindly, but with the quiet strength of someone who had already walked through the fire and come out changed. The end didn't begin tonight, Lucas. It began the moment you looked at her the way you used to look at me. That's when you chose to forget what commitment meant. He lowered his head. I took a hotel key from my purse and placed it on the table. I booked a room across the street. I'll return Monday morning. It would be best if you weren't there by then. Lucas's voice cracked. Please, Clara, don't do this. I'll do anything to fix it. You can't rebuild a house whose foundation is rot. And I'm done betraying myself with forgiveness I don't feel. I turned to Ethan. I'm truly sorry you had to find out this way. He nodded silently. Thank you for showing me what was real, even if it hurt. I looked once more at the 2 people across the table, so familiar and yet now so distant. I wish you luck. Not because I forgive you, but because everyone eventually faces the consequences of their choices. I walked out of Lumiere without turning back. The night air was crisp, and the city lights sparkled with indifference. In my hand was a small clutch, holding the key to room 1203 at the Celeste Hotel. I didn't know if peace waited behind that door, but I knew pain was behind me. Inside the room, I locked the door, removed my heels, and walked barefoot to the window. The city reflected in the glass like an echo of another life. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. No shadow beside me. No more lies to distract from the loneliness I had been living with. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not delicate tears, but the kind that come from the marrow of your bones. I cried for lost youth. For every night I waited by the door. For the dinners cooked in love while he texted someone else. I cried until there was nothing left but a strange, exhausted relief. A knock at the door broke the stillness. I peered through the peephole. It was Ethan. When I opened the door, he looked worn and tired. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside. Come in. We sat by the window in silence, watching the city pass us by as if the world hadn't fractured for us tonight. Finally, he turned to me. How did you know everything and still sit through dinner like that? I gave a small, bitter laugh. I wasn't sitting still. I was waiting. Some truths lose their meaning when they come from the wrong person. He nodded. Thank you for not letting me live in a lie. We talked for hours, two strangers bound by the same wound. He told me how Sophie had once believed in his dreams. I told him how Lucas had slipped a ring on my finger in the rain, promising to never lose his way. I think I'm going to file for divorce, I said. Ethan nodded slowly. I don't think I can live with someone who hides so much behind a smile. I met his gaze. I'm not angry anymore. Not the way I was. Anger fades. But I will never again stay in a relationship that slowly erodes my self-respect. You're stronger than I thought, he whispered. No, I replied. Just the last one willing to look at the truth. That night, Ethan stayed in a different room, but before he left, he turned and said, If you need a friend, I'm here. Thank you, I whispered. Tonight. I think you understand me better than my husband ever did. The next morning, I returned to the house. Lucas was waiting. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Clara, we need to talk, he said. Then talk, I replied. I messed up. I know. But I'll do anything. Therapy, quitting my job. Sophie's already left the city. Please. We can fix this. You can't fix what you chose to break, I said. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a series of choices. And now I'm making mine. Over the next few weeks, he tried everything. Gifts, calls, emails. I didn't answer. I had listened long enough. I filed for divorce. Later, I heard he stepped down from his position at work and vanished from social media. A man who had once built his life on appearances had been forced to finally face himself. Spring came early that year. The sun returned, and with it, so did a quiet peace. One Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through my new apartment as I made coffee. My phone rang. It was Ethan. Coffee at Tanner's? He asked. Give me 15, I smiled. We'd become regulars, survivors of the same shipwreck, now charting new waters. That morning, he had 2 lattes waiting. I guessed right, he grinned. You're the only one who ever remembers how I like it, I said. Lucas got it wrong for 17 years. We laughed, not bitterly, but freely. How have you been? I asked. I finalized the divorce last week, Ethan said. Sophie just left a note. She said she was sorry. Sorry for making me lose faith in love. And did you? He looked at me. No. I'm learning to believe again. Not in promises, but in small, consistent actions. That silence between us didn't need words. In the following months, I went back to teaching. I picked up photography again. Ethan spoke at my seminars. We shared pizza on my balcony, walked by the river, sat in museums in silence. One evening, he stopped mid-walk. I'm not in a rush, he said. But if one day you're ready, not for marriage, but for something honest, I'm here. I smiled. I'm not ready to love the old way. But maybe. I've already started the way you described. He took my hand. Not urgently. Just gently. And I let him. A year after that night at Lumiere, I attended my former professor's retirement party. I wore a navy dress and my mother's pearl earrings. And then, I saw him, Lucas. Older. Quieter. When he noticed me, he walked over. Clara, he said, voice roughened by time. I didn't expect to see you. I stayed composed. She's the last one still in touch with you, isn't she? He nodded. She always sees the best in people. He hesitated, then said, I owe you a real apology. Not because you need it, but because I need to say it. I lost more than I imagined. Not just my career or friends. I lost myself. I stayed quiet. I hope you find peace, I said. He looked down. And you? I'm rebuilding. On my terms. And I'm not alone. Just then, Ethan walked in. He smiled at me, genuinely, softly. Lucas saw. He nodded. He's a good man, he said. You deserve a fresh start. And so do you, I replied. But only when you're ready. And when you're certain you won't hurt anyone else in the process. That night, Ethan and I danced under golden lights. No grand declarations. Just trust and presence. As we left, I looked at the stars. There was a time I thought betrayal was the end, I said. And now? Ethan asked. Now I think it was a pause, so I could step onto a better path. He squeezed my hand. And we walked forward, quietly, surely, into a future we would build not on promises, but on truth. Thank you for watching interesting stories of Moody Tales. Kindly like, subscribe and share to get more interesting and educative stories. That's much better than this best wishes. From here, have a nice day.